If you are singing a song and you might love the song to pieces, and if the song it's clear to you that the song is not working for whatever reason, position of the moon, where you're standing in the room, it's the 8th song in a list of 10 songs and the kids have had it, whatever it is, it's important to be able to stop mid-song and say, oh, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to do something different. It's being willing to let go of the script and do what's best for the situation and not what's best for what you think you should be doing, but what's best for the situation.
Hey everybody, this is Chris from honestypill.com. You're listening to episode 11.
These go to 11.
Of the Honesty Pill podcast. This season on the show, I'll be talking to innovative musician entrepreneurs who have created new ways of performing, new ways of teaching, and new ways of serving their audiences. My guest today is an award-winning recording artist, performer, and children's music specialist, Ellen Allard. We cover a lot of ground in this one, including Ellen's awesome presentation advice about staying flexible in the moment and not being afraid to let go of the script. So basically, if anyone out there is talking or teaching or connecting with an audience, you're going to want to hear this. Other topics today will include uncovering a long-lost Yiddish opera, a quick lesson on Orff rhythm pneumatics that you and your kids can use right now, what it was like for Ellen to grow up studying piano with a certified Russian princess. What? And do you want a quick Yiddish lesson? Of course you do. The Honesty Pill podcast has you covered. We even have a visit from a few of Ellen's favorite puppets, and even though you won't be able to see it, trust me, it was totally awesome. All right, that is a lot. Let's dig into my interview with Ellen Allard. So excited to have you on the show, Ellen. Thanks for taking time to chat.
I am delighted to be here.
All right, so I have to be honest with you. Prepping for this show, I literally did not know where to start. You have so many things going on in your life in so many different directions. I'm going to see if I can capture it all in this one episode, but we may need to get together for part 2 at some point. So you are an award-winning performer and songwriter, a master teacher, a certified health coach. You lead retreats, you create online programs. You're even a gluten-free diva. We're definitely going to talk about that later. We have a lot of ground to cover today. So I guess I want to set up your background a little bit because where you started out and all the things you have done must have some excellent stories and twists and turns. So let's go back sort of to the beginning. You're a Jersey girl, right? Growing up just across a few bridges from me over in Long Island. And I wonder, like a lot of musical kids that I grew up with, did you head into New York City a lot to get exposed to all the music and things that were going on in there?
Yes, but not for the music. We went to New York City a lot because my father owned a clothing business, a factory, and he used to go into New York down to the garment district, and I would appear periodically, one or all of my sisters and I would accompany him.
That's incredible. So did he make all your clothes or is it just for work?
He made baby clothes and he made women's clothes. So it wasn't for teenagers.
Oh, so you probably wouldn't have worn anything your dad made for you anyway, right?
No. And the other side of that story, which is not a happy memory, is that because of his connections in the business, my mother would take the three of us, my 2 younger sisters and I, to New York City, and we would have to go to the factories where his colleagues made clothes for our age. And we used to have to wear those clothes, which I hated. They were not the cool clothes.
So was it a musical family, or were you kind of the first one into that part of your life?
Good question. I come from a very musical family, but mostly in the generation before me. My mother was one of 5 siblings. She was one of 4 sisters and a brother. And my uncle Bob, may he rest in peace, was ultimately the conductor of the Miami Beach Symphony. He was a violinist. And then the siblings all played or sang. My mother was a cellist early on, and all the siblings played something, piano or whatever. I don't even know the whole history of them. But my grandmother owned after her husband died, my grandfather, she owned a hotel in Lakewood, New Jersey, that a lot of New York Jews would come down to from Long Island, from New York City. And my mother and her siblings would entertain them in the lobby. There's lots of stories about they would like on the spot just spontaneously break out into song. And they wrote an opera, a Yiddish opera called the Tooth Opry, and it translated to the Tooth Opry. And so, yeah, I came from a very musical family.
Okay, I have to ask you, does this opera still exist anywhere? Is there a box in a closet somewhere or recording?
Yes, it is somewhere. It's actually in my memento box.
And has it been produced?
No, but what a great idea that is. Oh my God, that is such a good idea. You know what? I'm going back to Boston tomorrow. I'll see if I can dig it up.
This is the type of thing that makes it like all the way to the big houses. So, okay, you heard it here, folks. This is where it started. All right, can't wait to hear that. So, what was your first instrument that you laid your hands on?
Oh, it was piano. I was 5 years old, and I was that cute little 5-year-old whose legs dangled off the piano bench. And when everybody giggled at me in my first recital, I cried all the way home because I didn't understand why people were laughing at me when my parents just tried to convince me that they were really just thinking I was adorable.
Do you remember any of that early music that you played? Because I still remember the names of my two first recital pieces.
Oh gosh, I don't, but I can see the book. It was red and it was one of those horizontal books, and I treasured it. I think I still have it somewhere in my, oh, you know what? We're not even like 10 minutes into the interview and that's already a second idea. I should dig up those books and do like some kind of a story about it.
I think you have a closet spelunk project on the horizon.
John Thompson. They were the John Thompson piano books.
There you go. I think mine were Diller Quail or something like that. And I remember playing Poodles on Parade and Bear on a Bike. In fact, I constantly recycle those titles when I'm making like a joke about repertoire people have to work on. Like, I don't care what you're working on. If it's Poodles on Parade or Bear on a Bike. Somebody out there in podcast land needs to find that sheet music and send it to me. So you were playing piano. Did you like to practice, or were you a kid who had to be sort of convinced to get over there and get that work done?
I hated to practice. It was torture. And I mean, I will admit to you, even though it's terribly embarrassing, that because I consider myself a really honest person, but I think I lied through my high school years because, my mother would come home from teaching. She taught religious school, and she would come home and say, "Did you practice?" And I would say, "Yes," which I might have sat down for 5 minutes and played some Hanon or some scales, but that was about it.
That sounds like some of the things I hear my kids saying. I had a student actually once tell me, "Listen, practice makes perfect. Nobody's perfect, so why practice?" And, I couldn't actually argue with that logic, even though I don't think that person was going to go very far. What would you say, can you give me what's your earliest musical memory? Do you have one specific thing that sort of sparked you at some point?
Musical memory. I'm not so sure that it's music related as it is memories around it. I had two piano teachers growing up. The first one I had for the first 8 years, and her name was Dottie Hamburger.
That's an excellent name.
Excellent, like Poodles on Parade. Dottie Hamburger. And she was like another mother to me. And then when I was in 8th grade, my parents decided that I needed to graduate up to the big world. So they found a local teacher who, we lived in Lakewood, which was about an hour from New York City. And they found out about a teacher who was a princess by marriage to a Russian prince. And she taught at the Manhattan School of Music and Juilliard. And she had a house in Lakewood that she came to for a few days a week where she would teach. And so I started studying when I was in 8th grade through high school with Princess Elena Volkonsky. And I have great, great, great memories of going to her house and feeling like I was entering a magic kingdom.
You cannot make this stuff up. That's incredible. Can you repeat that name one more time?
Elena Volkonsky, Wolkonsky. That's
incredible. My daughter, who is constantly, playing with stuffed animals and dressing up in costumes, would love to have had a princess as a music teacher. So you were a lucky kid. So you didn't stay in New Jersey forever, but at some point you headed up I-95 and went to school in Boston, didn't you?
I did. I escaped my little town and I went to Boston University for 4 years. I graduated with a degree in both music education and performance. I started as a pianist with the idea of, my parents had this great idea that I was going to make it to Carnegie Hall and be a concert pianist. But, within my first year of being at school, I realized that I absolutely hated I'm a very social person, and to be in a practice room for 8 hours a day was torture. But I also loved being in Boston because it was so different than being in my little town, my little shtetl, that's a Yiddish word, a little tiny town in New Jersey. So my parents agreed that I could stay at BU as long as I remained in the music school. So that's when I split my degree and I did both music performance and music education, which ended up being even harder because I still had to, I had to do double the work.
Did you have to learn a lot of secondary instruments as a music education major?
I did.
What did you learn? Everything? Winds, brass, the whole thing?
You had to take one from every family. So I did trumpet.
All
You'll
right.
be glad to know.
I knew it.
And I did, for strings, I did guitar, which I still, play to this day. And woodwinds, I played flute in high school, so that covered that one. And what am I missing? Oh, drums. And I taught myself hand drums.
So what was your least favorite instrument to learn? You can say trumpet. I can see it in your face.
Trumpet.
You know what? That was my least favorite instrument to learn also. And, it worked out. So actually, it's interesting. You're not the first guest I've had on the show who was a music education and performance major. And I'm curious if that has, and I already know the answer because I know you so well, but how has that sort of informed the way you perform and the way for you, and we're going to talk about this more when we talk about your work with kids, is how it like hybrided together. Your performances are not your average performances. Like, talk a little bit about how your music education background may have created what you're doing today.
It actually did create what I do today. I will say that my training as a pianist definitely was pivotal in how I perform and how I write music, for sure, and how I teach, how I lead worship, all of that. But when I taught music, I actually, after I graduated, I went for further education and I became certified in a method called Orff, which is named after Karl Orff, who's a German composer. And he's most well known for his opera that he wrote called Carmina Burana. But he developed this music education method. And it spoke to me in many deep ways and totally 100% has totally affected how I do everything.
Could you describe for people who maybe aren't familiar with the different styles of learning, like Dalcroze and things, what is Orff's sort of thing?
So Orff is very much based on, I'll give you a really simple explanation. It's very much based on rhythm and body movement, what's called Pattchen, which stands for padding. And we teach a rhythm. We'll teach for quarter, eighth quarter, we'll do ta, ta, ti, ti, ta. So when they're looking at music, if they're reading, rather than saying quarter, eighth quarter, they say ta, ta, ti, ti, ta. And there's a lot of repetition, a lot of taking an idea, a musical motif, and using it either rhythmically through an instrument, through your voice, through your body, through moving. And it's that the concept of having a motif that repeats throughout the piece is very much a part of Orff.
I love these concepts and these tools of taking something that's complicated and might actually turn someone away, even an adult beginner in music, from the mathematics of where the beat lies and removes all that. So you can, my kids do something called blue jello as part of their Suzuki work. It's blue jello, blue, same sort of idea you're talking about. And they can still read rhythms pretty accurately. I'm surprised at how quickly they've picked it up without even really knowing what the mathematical relationship with the time signature is. And that will come, obviously, down the road. But these are really important things to do when getting kids on board with learning the theory behind what they're hearing.
Absolutely. And it's, it's a great way to help kids learn to be composers, because they can take these rhythmic ideas and they can make up their own. And you can do things like, this is a podcast, so you can't see, but if I could graphically show you what I mean, I might take something like, here, I'll use this. So I have a pencil and I have another pencil, right? And say that the two pencils right next to each other are quarter notes. And then the next two things I have are two pens. And I put those together like this. And you can already see that the two quarter notes are the two pencils are standing on their own, like two quarter notes, and the two pens are next to each other. They're hugging, and they're two eighth notes. So this would be, if you did, it would be ta, ta, ti, ti. And if I put another pencil, right, that would be ta, ta. I'm going to make this ta, let's see. Ta, ta, ti, ti, ta. So graphically, it's just, kids love stuff like that. It's fun. You can do it with apples. You can put apples on the floor, do apple, pear, apple. And it just makes it super easy to learn.
I love it. And I love the visual. I actually just sneakily took a screenshot of you doing that. So I'll post it in the show notes so everybody can see what I just saw. That was brilliant. I love it. I want to talk a little bit about how, I'm reading this off your website here. Ellen has been privileged to perform children's concerts and present teacher workshops, seamlessly moving between both the secular and Jewish world of early childhood. Tell me a little bit about how you moved into bringing this into the synagogues and bringing it into those communities and what that's meant for you as a musician and a teacher.
Oh, that's such a good question. Well, I started out as a secular music teacher. I taught for 4 years in the public schools, K through 5. I was the elementary vocal music teacher, and I decided at some point after the 4 years, I was moving at that point to Philadelphia, and it was a perfect time for me to segue into going to graduate school. And at that point, I will admit, after 4 years of teaching music in the public school, 8 classes a day, class after class, I was burnt out. It was really hard. So when I planned to go to Philadelphia, I thought, you know what, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to stay in education, but I'm going to get a master's in early childhood education, which is what I did. Never in a million years thinking that I was going to stay in music. But as soon as I finished my graduate school and then tried to get a job as a preschool teacher, the minute I did that, as soon as people found out about my music background, I became the resident music teacher. So I couldn't get away. I couldn't get away from it. So then I did that for a few years. One of the places I taught was the Jewish Community Center in West Hartford, Connecticut. And one of the parents, who was part of a woodwind quintet, approached me one day and said, I had his 3 kids in class. And he said, you're really good at this. You should definitely take this on the road. And I'm like, what are you talking about taking on the road? I'm a teacher. I'm not a performer. No. You're a performer. So he actually was my first coach. Just realized that he was my first coach, and he helped me create a plan where I was going to begin taking it on the road, and I did. And so anyway, I had a bunch of songs that I had written when I was teaching at the JCC that were Jewish songs for the Jewish holidays. And a couple of years later, I uncovered them, I found them, and I thought, you know what, there's a CD in here. And I finished writing for some of the more obscure holidays, and that became a CD, and that was what my launch pad. So I went from really doing mostly secular music to doing almost exclusively all Jewish music for kids.
I love it. And I love the fact that you discovered that you've already had coaching in your life and how it had an impact. And the definition of a coach is just somebody getting you to do what you can already do.
Right.
So I think that example you just gave is a really clear one. I want to talk not specifically about a program, but about the types of programs that you create and how you're bringing this into your communities and how they're not just music tutorials or teaching modules for a few people, but how they actually have a transformative experience for an entire community. What does that look like? What made you realize that you could have a wider impact, even working with a smaller part of a community and really reaching everyone into their homes?
When you are in front of a congregation, of 50, 100, 300 people that consists of parents and children, and you realize that you can use music to create this vibe of togetherness, of community. I like to say we're building community. It's powerful. I mean, from an ego standpoint, it's powerful, but I don't even go there. For me, I can disappear because I've done my job. I have brought them together and created this sense of community that you can't buy. It's a feeling. What I tell people when we negotiate and talk about what this weekend is going to look like, we talk about the fact that children are really the gateway for families to become involved in synagogue life. And if you can get kids and their parents hooked and excited about what they're experiencing, you're going to lay the foundation for them ultimately remaining involved and engaged in synagogue life, and also in living Jewishly when they're home. There's something really special about being the person who helps to facilitate that.
Speaking about that experience, tell me about Tot Shabbat. What is it? What's the experience like, and why is that a thing?
So in 1995, I was living in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I belonged. When I moved to the community, I decided to join the local one of the 2 local reform congregations. And when they found out about my background, 2 of the parents came to me and said, "Would you like to lead Tot Shabbat?" And I looked at them and I said, "Huh? What? What is that?" And so I quickly learned that Tot Shabbat is a Shabbat, or a Shabbat is Hebrew for Sabbath. Tot obviously is for little kids. So Tot Shabbat is a Sabbath service for little kids. And they asked me to do it. And that was in 1995. I did it for 10 years, once a month. And it was really, for me, and again, another pivotal stepping stone for me to be the person that I am today, because a lot of my music was written during those 10 years. And it's a worship service that is not, I'm loath to even use the word worship service because I don't want it to sound dry, and it's fun. I mean, we're up and dancing and we're moving and we're jumping and we use puppets and it's about getting together and celebrating and being joyful and learning some Hebrew and singing songs about universal, spirit and God. And it's great. It's a lot of fun.
So talk to me a little bit about songwriting, because this is an area sort of like jazz improvisation, which I've talked about on the show as well, where a lot of people get frozen, they get paralyzed. And I know there are probably a lot of different ways people approach writing, but what's your methodology? Do you sort of sit down with a chord structure? Do you have lyrics in mind? Do you have an idea of what it is you want to write? And the reason I'm asking is because when this pandemic started, you put out a song. I don't know if you wrote it specifically for the time period or if it was already a thing, but it was the toothbrush song, or the toothbrushing song. And I bought a copy, I printed it out, and I taped it to the mirror in my kid's bathroom and said, "This is the song we're going to use while we're brushing our teeth, kids."
Was it the one that goes, when I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth. Boker tov. Boker tov means good morning. So it's boker tov, boker tov, boker tov. When I wake up in the morning, I brush my teeth. Right.
That is the one. That was a brilliant performance. Thank you for that too.
I've been taken to task for that song because apparently the Boker Tov part sounds like a ripoff on, and I can't remember, the Banana Splits, I want to say. I think it was a group maybe from Australia. I'm not positive, but they apparently had a melody because when I posted it on Facebook, a friend of mine wrote and said, "That's not your song." And I said, "Well, whose song is it?" And she told me, and I said, "I've never heard of them. I swear, never heard of them." So there's only so many notes on the scale,
You're right. There's only so many notes, especially if you're writing a kid's song. But so what did you come up with first? The lyrics or the feel, or did it all just sort of come out of you at one time?
I wrote that when I was in Seattle, and I was there at Temple de Hirsch in Seattle, Washington. It was part of a tour that I was doing. And I can picture actually where I was sitting. I was on the floor with a fellow early childhood music person who was the resident person there. And I looked out at the audience, and we had just gathered, but we weren't ready yet. And I just picked up my guitar, and the song like spilled out of my mouth. And that's how it happens with me. I tend not to write separate lyrics and separate melody. It literally comes out all in one fell swoop, or in one swell swoop, as they say.
The toothbrush song was brilliant. I have to thank you for that. My kids loved it.
You're very welcome. You have to write a lot of clunkers to get the good ones. I mean, I have a cell phone full of voice memos with songs that I've written, and I go back and I listen to them and I say, "Oh my God, why didn't you delete that right after you wrote it? It sucks."
So do you just grab the phone and create a voice memo when you have an idea?
Yeah, constantly. I mean, I have thousands of them.
So you're going to record a song. You're going to sit down. You're going to write something. You need to record it into something. You need to have some technical experience and learning how to use microphones and tech. I can see behind you on the camera, there are ring lights and microphones and cables. So I want to talk about Trello boards too, because I know this is something that you and I have talked about. Was there sort of a moment where you realized, I need to develop and up my game a bit with the tech to make this business work and to maximize of my efficiency of my time in writing and getting this stuff out to people? Because we're obviously all connecting through the internet these days.
Yes. I mean, I would say it probably started long before COVID, but I think COVID was like the icing on the cake, which kind of pushed me out the door and said, "You got to do this." And it didn't happen all at once. It's been very gradual. The ring light is the latest addition to my arsenal. I have this blue, whatever it's called, the blue snowball microphone, which is my USB mic. I have so many cords and adapters that I could probably open a store. And I have a Scarlett audio interface, and I have I have a USB interface, and I'm learning how to use them. And I have a lot of friends who help me, and I also am dogged. I'm very stubborn. And when I want to learn something, I just, Dr. Google or YouTube are my way. And sometimes it takes me hours and hours, but eventually I figured it out. And one of the ways where Trello comes in handy is that it happened this morning. I had to finish a track on GarageBand, and I started it 2 weeks ago. And I thought that I was going to remember how to do it. And then when I sat down this morning, it was like Greek. I was like, I couldn't remember what to plug in, what to click on. I couldn't remember any of it. And it took me a while to slowly kind of warm up, like warming up your engine. And it finally came back. And then I realized that I should have gone into Trello 2 weeks ago and written down my process, because that's what I do with everything. I go to Trello, I write down the process, and then I can refer back to it.
I had to ask you about Trello, Ellen, because I know you and I have talked about it before, and I literally do the exact thing that you just said. When I have to render a green screen video or mix a podcast or whatever, where there's multiple steps that I'm probably going to be doing late night and tired, I have a list that has a step-by-step instruction, even linking it back to the original YouTube video that maybe I found where that was explained to me. So, I mean, and we can use Trello for, song lyrics, for organizing programs. What else are you using the technology for?
Oh, things I learned from you. Are you kidding? I have a whole board that's called my AV board. And I've been slowly adding to it, but every single piece of equipment that I own, I take a picture of, or I grab a picture from Amazon or the internet, and I add the picture and I add the receipt and any other instructions that might be helpful when I want to go look for it.
When it comes to saying thank you, a lot of people just send like a note in the mail or something, but you have found yourself video editing, writing a few beautiful thoughts down, then setting it to some acoustic guitar music, including a big colorful title, and then sending it through Facebook to the person. Do you know the video I'm talking about?
No.
Yeah, I was searching your Facebook page, and you wrote one to our coach after a program that she ran and sent you something in the mail. And this is just like a great example of how technology can bring something more impactful than just a quick email or saying thank you.
Yeah, I've been using video a lot. A couple of years ago, I took a video learning. It was called Light It Up Video. And I actually am an affiliate for it now, and say that because not because I want to sell it, although I do, because it's fabulous. It's really what has helped me up level my skills for doing video and becoming more confident. And it's not just about getting up and doing the video, but there are other considerations, lighting and sound, and how far above your head the top of the video should be. And what about behind you? There's just a lot of things that are considerations. And that's been hugely helpful. I also wanted to tell you that I try now, whenever I can, when somebody likes something, like follows me on Facebook or likes me on Instagram, I send them a private message, video, thanking them. And I cannot tell you how many times people write back to me and say, oh my goodness, nobody's ever done this before. How cool. Thank you. So it's a great tool that we have at our fingertips that I think a lot of people aren't realizing that it can be utilized.
What are you using for those video messages? Do you have a certain app you like to use?
For those, I use my iPhone.
And just send them a video.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I just turn it, reverse do the little arrows, and I do a selfie. I do a selfie video and just say, hey, Nicole, thank you so much. I know you don't know me, but I am so thrilled that you follow me on Facebook. I follow you, and I'm so excited to be your friend.
That is a brilliant way to take something so technical and turn it to something super, super personal. And I'm always looking for those silver linings especially during the times we're in right now where we can't see these people face to face. It's great to be able to find ways to turn that technology around. Speaking of connecting through technology, what was the first time you ever went live in Facebook, and what did it feel like, and what have you learned since the first time you've done that? Because I've seen you pop up on my phone often doing songs and in the kitchen and doing all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. I think I was in New York City, if I recall, and I had gotten off the bus and I was walking to my daughter's apartment, and I took out my phone. I was walking up 8th Avenue, I think, and I just videotaped myself. People actually write private message me now and remind me about that. I don't even remember the song, but I have this new song. I just wrote it on the train, and I'm going to do it singing. I'm going to sing it right here, walking up 8th Avenue in New York City. And yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh, is that still available? I want to go check it out.
I'm sure it's somewhere. It's probably on Facebook.
Ellen, I want to switch gears completely, like 180 away from tech right now, and talk about the way that you work with kids. Because this for me, when I think of you, is what I think of the most. You standing in front of a room full of kids and connecting with them in a way that I don't know if that can be taught. I don't know if what you do with kids can be learned or if it's just an innate part of your personality. And that's always something I'm interested in. Can these skills be learned? And I don't know if you can, but your Facebook business page has the following heading on it. It says, I teach musicians how to use songs, stories, and puppets to instantly engage with young kids. So how does that work? What is the magic of bringing something like a puppet into the conversation that connects with kids so quickly and so easily?
I think it's about being willing to suspend reality, even though you know and the kids know that you're suspending reality. They don't care, And I last year I had actually February of 2020. I had a gig and I had my Mimi puppet, and one of the kids was sitting on the floor next to me, and he said loud enough for everybody to hear. And we're talking 5 years old maybe, and he said, "You're talking. The puppet's not talking." And I looked at him and I said, "You are so right. Shh, don't tell anybody." I think it's just being childlike and being willing to let go of whether your hair is in place or whether your makeup looks right or whether you sing a note that's sour. Who cares? That's not important. What's most important is that you're connecting with the kids. And that's all that counts.
Do you think there's something about removing the focus away from, you're hearing this from an adult also, that maybe they can relate more to a puppet, or they can sort of suspend that it's a grown-up telling them something?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think that it might be. I mean, when you do it as an adult and you're a performer, you have a skilled way of presenting what you're doing. But I think I would imagine that kids also playing puppets with each other can do the same thing. Kids can do it they just automatically don't care what they look like or what they sound like. They're just doing it because they have landed in this magic place of fun and fantasy, and they're willing to be there without worrying whether what they're singing or saying is right or wrong, or they love being in that place.
Is there a big mistake that people make when singing to or working with kids that you see happen that you wish you could help them with?
Maybe one of the mistakes, there's many that I would like to, if and when I coach people, I tell them one of the most important things you can do is, if you are singing a song and you might love the song to pieces, and if the song it's clear to you that the song is not working for whatever reason, position of the moon, where you're standing in the room, it's the 8th song in a list of 10 songs and the kids have had it, whatever it is, it's important to be able to stop mid-song and say, "Oh, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to do something different." It's being willing to let go of the script and do what's best for the situation, and not what's best for what you think you should be doing, but what's best for the situation.
I love, love, love that you just said let go of the script, because that is applicable to so many areas of what we do as kids, grown-ups, coaches, musicians, teachers, whatever. And the minute you let go of the script is when the real authenticity and the real connection happens. And that is very difficult for teachers and performers and coaches, because we're so rooted in perfectionism and what we think people need to hear. That's brilliant.
Right. And you have to also be willing to improvise, and to trust yourself. I think if you don't trust yourself, then letting go of the script is going to be difficult. You have to trust that whatever's going to come out of your mouth is going to be just perfect for that moment.
If you had to choose, and this is such a weird scenario, but it just popped in my head. If you had to choose either to only play for the rest of your life the piano or the guitar, which would you choose?
Oh, gosh. Probably the guitar, but only because it's how I connect with kids.
And that's why I asked the question, because when I see you and you're talking about this improvisatory vibe that you have and the connectivity, I see you, I pictured you with a guitar and not behind the piano. And I saw you getting down in there with the kids, with the guitar in your hands, just inches away from their faces. And that's why I asked the question, because I wonder if the piano, it's rooted, it's stuck to the floor pretty much, right? So you you're actually behind the thing, right? So I think the guitar is a much better vehicle for what you're doing anyway.
Yeah, it really is. That's the way I connect with the kids, and that's the way I can, one of the things I do when I coach and I teach is helping teachers and performers learn about their space and to understand that when I walk into a room, when I'm performing, the first thing I do is I look at the space. First thing, where are the windows? Where's the door? Is there carpeting on the floor? How's the lighting? Where can I situate myself so that when the kids are facing me, they're not going to be distracted by somebody walking in through a door? And so space is so important. Being able to connect with the kids in every single way possible is vital.
Are you talking about the space or the energy, or is it really the same thing?
Well, I'm talking about primarily for that explanation, the physical space. If you want the energy to be electric, if you want the energy to be high vibe as well as quiet, you have to physically make sure that the environment is set so that it works to your advantage and is best for the kids. If I'm standing with my back to the door and the kids are facing me, so they're facing the door, then anytime anybody walks in, they're not going to be looking at me. They're going to look at the door. I want them to stay suspended in whatever magic I'm weaving. And in order to do that, I have to make sure that they're not going to be distracted. And it's not ego. It's not about look at me, 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 me. It's about how can I best teach or perform or share what I'm sharing and really serve it on a beautiful silver platter so that they can partake in the most expedient way possible, a way that's going to give them the best experience.
Hearing you describe this, I know people are going to want to work with you and bring this into their own community. So let's talk a little bit about your experience as a coach, working with coaches, programs you're thinking about, programs you have. Give us the update on what you're at with those types of things.
Well, I have a very exciting year ahead of me. 2021 is going to be pretty groundbreaking. Working with Jennifer Rosenthal was amazing, as I did in the first 6 months of this year. And then I also started working with a coach by the name of Leonard Patterson, who I introduced you to. And he and I are going to be doing some work together for 2021. In fact, I met with him earlier today. And I am going to really take a sort of zoom out approach and look at everything that I want to do and try to shape a calendar so that I can accomplish my goals. And one of them is to launch an 8-week program where I teach people how to do what I do and how to really become successful at utilizing music to engage with kids. That's the whole 9 yards. How can you engage with kids?
Who is that program for?
It's really for anybody who works with kids and uses music. And that could be in a Jewish setting, in a Christian setting, in a Buddhist, it doesn't matter what religion it is. It could be in a secular setting, as long as it's somebody who cares deeply. I only want to work with people who care deeply about connecting with kids using music. I want them to be able to take this pencil that has a troll on the top of it, right? And I want them to be able to take this would be their homework, and immediately write a song or create a puppet scenario with this. That might be something like, "Hello, Ellen, how are you today? Oh, wait a minute, don't tell me. I can tell how you are. You have a big smile on your face. Oh, let's sing a song." I want them to be able to do that.
That was brilliant. This reminds me of the musical fun version of that sales technique where you say, "Sell me this pen," right? Mm-hmm. I like yours better. Write me a song about this pen. Speaking of puppets, I forgot to ask you, where did you get your interest in puppets? Did you watch a lot of the Muppets, Jim Henson stuff? And who is your sort of marquee puppet that you bring out the most for these concerts?
Oh, well, thank you. I've been, watching Sesame Street for years, and I'm it brings out the kid in me. I love puppets. I'm happy to suspend reality, and I have a whole closet full of puppets. And the one that I have two most recent puppets. One is named Mimi, and her name is Mimi the Mermaid. And a very sweet story. Mimi the Mermaid was born into my life in December, a year ago, actually. And I was at a conference, and it was a Jewish conference called the URJ Biennial. And I was leading a worship service for little kids and their parents. And when I do this, which I do every 2 years at this conference, there are always cantors and rabbis that come because they want to learn how to do what I do. So one of the things in Judaism, and I'm sure it's in other religions as well, is when you have a new baby, you have a naming ceremony. So I had just picked up Mimi I bought her at Whole Foods, believe it or not. I saw her and I was like, oh my God, I have to have her. And I was walking down the hall in the hotel on my way to the session. And I thought, oh, we have to have a baby naming ceremony. So I walked into the session and I grabbed one of my friends who's a cantor and I said, you're going to officiate because this needs to happen. Mimi needs to be named. So when we got to that part of the service, which was like 45 minutes in, and we had this naming ceremony, I literally burst into tears, and so did several people who were in attendance. And we had 100 people in attendance, and we had an official with Hebrew prayers and everything. We named Mimi, and she's named after my mother, may she rest in peace, whose name is Mimi. So her name is Mimi the Mermaid.
That might be the best baby naming story I've ever heard, Ellen. That was brilliant. Since we brought this up, I'll just share with you and about the bringing to tears. This is my son's puppet, Greenhorn. Maybe I'll take a screenshot of Greenhorn. And he's a very curious dragon. But the reason I bring him on camera, sorry for those of you listening can't see this beautiful dragon, is that even at 10 years old, my son and I still have really kind of like interesting conversations through this puppet, where I know he knows it's my hand inside the puppet, but Greenhorn can say things that I can't say. And Greenhorn can get him to open up about things that I can't get him to open up about. And I keep waiting for him to be bored of it or be over it. And he's never bored of it. He always wants Greenhorn to talk about this or that. And I think there's a magic there, both for him and for me, in those conversations that I will never forget. And we do sing some songs too. I don't bust out the guitar because it's hard to play guitar with a puppet on your hand. But I do think that there's something magical about that suspension of reality that grown-ups forget about. Certainly serious orchestral musicians, we definitely get far away from that in what we do. And things like this and the things that you do and this joy that you bring to your communities is something that we need a reminder about frequently.
And joy that we can bring not only to kids, but to grownups too. All of us need to play. That's a big part of my teaching and my coaching is helping people adopt and really embrace the idea of play and being playful. I've been giving some thought to renaming this 8-week course, and I think it's something to do with musical purposeful play. That's not yet what it is. It's evolving, but something to do with musical play.
I love workshopping names of programs. So let's hop on another call. Let's talk about another degree you have hanging on your wall. You've studied holistic health coach specialization in gluten-free nutrition. I don't know if I just butchered the name of that, but basically you are the gluten-free diva. And I'm not saying that offhand. That's actually a thing for you. Tell us about Gluten-Free Diva. Tell us why you get into that and what you've done with that platform.
So Gluten-Free Diva was born in 2005 when I was diagnosed with celiac. And a few months after the diagnosis, I was like, how am I going to ever do this? This basically is torture. At the time, you have to realize this was 15 years ago, the gluten-free landscape was very different than it is now. You were lucky if you could find rice flour bread, which was horrific and dry and just like sawdust. And I had a lot of tears over that. And a few months later, I decided to start a blog. And at the time, it was called iamglutenfree.blogspot.com. And I did that for, 7 years maybe. And then I switched to a new name, and the new name was Gluten-Free Diva. So that's really when that name was born. Continued blogging until a couple of years ago when I had issues with the blog, and I just decided I wanted to focus more on the music, but I still kept it alive. But in the meantime, I decided in 2011 to start this program through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition called Holistic Health Coaching. And it was a year-long program, and I got a degree in it and started coaching people and helping people try to get over how challenging and treacherous it can be to all of a sudden completely change your diet and eat gluten-free. It's much easier now than it was then. So many more options. But I feel strongly about it. It's actually morphed beyond that, to tell you the truth, into for the last 6 months, I've really focused on being whole food plant-based. I'm also gluten-free. And I feel like $1 million. I feel like I have reversed the clock 20 years.
Wow.
I feel so good. And I would stand up on a pedestal and preach about it, but most people don't want to hear about it. So unless they want to, and then they find me and we talk about it, and happy to coach people. It's not really my focus right now. My focus is the music, but I'm happy to talk about air fryers and instant pots and how to cook beans from scratch anytime with anybody.
You said it's gotten easier being gluten-free because obviously, grocery store chains and restaurants are getting the idea that this is a thing. But here's one area that I'm curious if it hasn't gotten easier, and that is putting a label on yourself and having to explain that label to somebody who doesn't understand it. And I'm not just talking about being gluten-free. This could be being an entrepreneur or a coach or anything that is different than someone else, where you have to suddenly you feel like you have to explain to them what this is and why it is. And there's still a lot of judgment around these labels that we put on ourselves. And I'm using gluten-free as an example because I know that when Amanda goes into a restaurant, because she is gluten-free, she's not celiac, but she's gluten-free. And sometimes she still has to explain it and almost stand up for herself in a way. And that's such a weird challenge for me that I just don't understand about human nature as to why someone would say, oh, you're a coach or you're a performer, but you can do something different. Like, we don't all have to be so singular about the way we identify ourselves. And that's something that I wonder if you've thought about as standing up and saying, not only am I gluten-free, I'm the gluten-free diva.
I tell people that I'm privileged to do the work that I do, and that I'm happy to talk to them at any time if they want to learn more about it. And if I have to defend myself, I do, but I do it in a very positive way. I've also learned little tricks of the trade. Like if I'm with a group of people and I know for sure that when the wait staff comes over to take our order, they're not going to want to hear the litany of asks that I have. I know that what I do is I say, I'm going to order the bowl. I'm going to order that Nourish bowl. And he said, oh, what do you want in? I'll have broccoli and I'll have this and I'll have that. And then he'll take the order from the rest of the table. He'll walk away or she'll walk away. And then I say, excuse me, I have to go to the restroom. And then I go and I find the wait staff and I go, I forgot to tell you a couple of things. I'm so glad you haven't put the order in yet, have you? Or I'll talk to the manager of the restaurant and I'll say, I really need you to make sure I need to be really carefully gluten-free. So you have to learn to advocate for yourself. And you have to learn to not care what other people think. It's the nature of the beast.
That's great advice. And that's a great strategy of chasing down the manager. Yeah, it's an interesting journey to be on, and advocating for yourself is something that I think, I don't want to just pull it all back to musicians all the time, but musicians do need to learn how to advocate for themselves. Musicians do need to learn how to step up and not let gatekeepers and other people define what they can claim their authority on.
Absolutely. And, I think that there are still people in my life, some people closer to me than others, and I'm not going to name names, but who still think that, I just do this sort of music thing as a side thing, and I couldn't possibly be earning a living. Well, I'm not going to convince them otherwise. I'm just going to walk the walk and know that I'm 65 and change, and I have lived a life full of experiences that have led me to this moment. And I am perfectly positioned to continue to be an entrepreneur. In fact, I was listening this morning to an interview with Michael Hyatt, who is one of my heroes. And he was talking about his new book that's coming out about being an entrepreneur. And it just reminded me that I am very proud of who I am and what I am. And I knew, I can tell you that I knew 2 years into teaching music in the public schools, I went to the superintendent of the schools, and I said, is it possible for me to teach part-time and only do 2.5 days a week instead of 5? Because that was the beginning of my being burnt out. And his only answer to me was, I remember it like it was yesterday, well, I don't want to have to pay health insurance for 2 people. And I said, oh, you don't have to worry about that. I got the health insurance covered. And he was like, okay, fine. So they found somebody else to take over the 2.5 days. And that was really the beginning of me being an entrepreneur. And I haven't looked back since then. I'm constantly inventing and reinventing myself. And right now I'm so excited about what 2021 holds for me. I feel like I'm going to be on fire, and I have a lot to share with the world, from launching this course to really fleshing my YouTube channel, to I have 12 CDs in my catalog, and I'm going to start doing magical things. Those CDs go back to the mid 90s when they were first recorded. And, coaching people, and I'm very excited. I'm going to be doing a challenge, a free challenge in early 21 that's going to lead into a paid program. So there's lots and lots and lots of good things that are coming. And I'm happy to be an entrepreneur, and I'm happy to explain that to anybody who wants to ask me about it.
Any little hints about what the challenge might be, or is that still top secret?
Probably going to have something to do with tips on, I actually have come up with a list of 10 tips. I'm not sure if I'm going to do 7 or 10 or what. I don't know what the number's going to be, but it's going to be tips on how to really up-level what you do as a person who brings music to young children. And it'll be just very small little tips that are going to make a difference. And my hope is that when they finish that 3-day challenge, they're going to go, okay, well, we want more. So what else do you have? And that will be my goal.
Okay, a couple more questions, Ellen. Looking at 2021, how are you going to keep yourself from getting, as you said, burnt out? How do you keep balance? How do you keep your brain from waking you up at 2:00 in the morning thinking about Trello boards and programming? And I'm asking for my own edification, because this happens to me even now sometimes.
Yeah, it's very, very hard. Michael and I have a routine, and every night after dinner, I have to hold myself back. Sometimes it's like wild horses. I have to hold myself back from not coming back into this very room right now, and because there's always more work when you're an entrepreneur and you're paying the bills and you're making the money, and you're writing the script. There's always more that can be done. I have to hold myself back from doing that, and we have our little routine and this was pre-COVID and since, where we go into the TV room and we pick something out to watch. We start with the news, which is usually gruesome and horrible, and then we'll watch something. We just finished watching The Crown, and we love watching programs like that because then we dissect them and we talk about them at breakfast the next day, and we talk about the characters, and we love doing that. So I do that. I walk religiously. I feel very strongly about that. I have 2 legs. I might as well use them. So I go out. This morning I walked a couple, almost 2 miles. Usually I do 4. So I do that. I watch a lot of YouTube videos and things about things that I'm interested in. I'm a student of life. I love life and I love learning. I'm also a student of learning. So I really I'm privileged to be alive. I know that sounds kind of corny, doesn't it?
No, I was going to say the opposite. I was going to say you mentioned you're 65 and change, but it sounds like you're just hitting your stride.
I feel like I am. I honestly feel like I am.
That's beautiful. All right, I'm going to leave you with a multiple choice for your last question. You can either give me your favorite gluten-free dish or your favorite Yiddish word or phrase that I need to learn.
Well, what was it that I said before when I said, nudnik.
Nudnik. Okay, what's a nudnik?
Sorry for being a nudnik, because I was having problems with my camera, and nudnik, I think it's a Yiddish word. A nudnik is like somebody who's like a nudge, it's like somebody who's like a pain in the tush. There's another one. See, my language is full of Yiddish words.
You're using a lot of Yiddish to explain the Yiddish. That's not helping me.
Oh, yeah. My mother sang a song to me when growing up, and it was called Wo ist das Gesela? And it goes like this. Wo ist das Gesela? Wo ist das Stieb? Wo ist das Mädela, wenn man nicht blieb? Ut ist das Mädela? Ut ist das Stieb? Ut ist das Gesela, wenn man nicht blieb? And I apologize to anybody who knows Yiddish if I butchered any of that, but that's how my mother sang it to me. And it's a song about wo ist das Mädela? Where is the Mädela? She used to call me her little Mädela. Mädela is like a little girl. Where is the young girl? Wo ist das Mädela? Wo ist das Stieb? Where is the city? Wo ist das Gesela? Where is the house? It's a longing kind of a song, and she would often sing it to me with tears in her eyes, and her mother sang it to her. So I share that with you as a way to continue my mother's memory and to share the music that really informed who I am.
I was hoping that you would sing, and even though I didn't understand a word, I could listen to you sing all day long. And on that note, please tell us, where can our listeners connect with you online and get access to all those recordings that you mentioned earlier?
Well, the first thing I would say is to go to my website as fast as you possibly can. In fact, do it right now while you're listening. Go to my website, which is ellenallard.com, and scroll down to the bottom and you'll find an opt-in. You want to get onto my email list because I send out juicy newsletters. So that's number one. You can find me on Facebook at my name. Ellen Allard is my profile, or Ellen Allard Music is my business page. If you're a music teacher and you want to learn more about music with young children, join my group, which is called Music Teachers Rock. You can find me on YouTube, Ellen Allard Music. You can find me on Instagram, Ellen Allard Music, Twitter. I'm all over you. I'm unavoidable. You can't miss me.
I will link all those up in the show notes. Ellen, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, to teach us, to sing for us. I'm going to go take Greenhorn the puppet and have a chat with my kid about brushing his teeth now. But looking forward to seeing you in person again next time you're out in LA or next time I head up to Boston.
God willing, I'm going to knock on wood. And thank you very much. You're such an expert interviewer. It was my pleasure.
Thanks, Ellen. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
So grateful to Ellen Allard for hanging out with us for a bit today, and a special thank you to Mimi the puppet for making an appearance. And you don't get that on every podcast out there, folks, so I hope that was working for you. Hey, just a quick heads up and a date announcement. If you're listening to this episode in December 2020 or January 2021, there are a ton of trainings happening at Honesty Pill, including the launch of my 6-month group Online Business Accelerator 2.0 program. So head over to honestypill.com to learn more, see if you're a good fit, see if it's good for you, and even book a free 30-minute discovery call with yours truly. Happy to answer any questions about the program or just chat and see where you are at in your musical life. All of those links are available in the show notes. Okay, that's it for me today. This has been the Honesty Pill Podcast, episode 11. You can find out more at honestypill.com. Check out the free resource library. Make sure you subscribe to my mailing list to get in the loop. Lots of other good stuff over there. And thank you so much for listening. Have a happy holiday. See you next time.